So welcome to today's podcast. Thanks for joining me as well. So today's episode is going to be a part one of two, and it's centered on a recent trip I took with my son. We got to go to the North Carolina area, which I had never been to before. It was cool. The Raleigh, North Carolina area, the Research Triangle, which was fun to see and explore. And I figured I'd bring home my son who just got back to college to tour with me. And we got to see some investment property. We'll go through a little bit there, but we got to see the area. So it was really fun. And, it was kind of had a lot of purposes to the trip, not just to evaluate an investment personally for ourselves and potentially other clients, but really got to use the time to be able to spend quality time with my son, and even kind of give me exposure to, unique areas of investment and personal finance that most people typically don't see. And so on this episode, for this first part, really, it's going to be just myself. Part two might bring my son in to get his perspectives. But for me, kind of what was the purpose of this event, and kind of what insights and things sort of stood out to me that I thought might be helpful for you as you're evaluating just, your wealth building or legacy planning, or you might hit on a few different things. So let's start with, why would I bring him to this event? So just to summarize, it was visiting and meeting with the operators of a multifamily syndication, purchasing apartment complexes and getting investors involved and partnering with them on it. And so this was to meet the team and see the market, see the properties, to get a better gauge and do proper due diligence on whether these investments make sense. And so part of it was, financial education. That's something I think most people would agree that most financial education is lacking, broadly speaking. They're not going to teach us stuff really deeply in school. And, it's not really part of a lot of families' conversations and education. So this was partially meant to help you spread some education to my son and give him some exposure, right? To see what these deals look like and kind of meet other investors and certainly meet the team and sort of get a sense of what these things look like. And so it was great because kids don't really get to see those sorts of things, and, to help them think through their decision-making around investments like this was really good, because I got to watch it before, understand some of the numbers and aspects of it, but you only can get so much when you see it on paper. But when you actually go out and see things, I think it'd be a little bit different. And I think a lot of it is, investments can feel so abstract in some cases until you actually see things in person. So I certainly personally, for my own money and investing, wanted to see it. And I think it's really helpful for, the rising generation to also see these things and see what's possible, even if it isn't something they want to do personally down the road. And it allowed us to sort of, foster conversation over time. And frankly, something just to spend time with them. As kids get older, they want their independence and obviously their own friendships. So it allowed us to bond as father or son and build relationships and such, and help think through, how these things fit into our own finances and even create pride in my practice. So it was really good to sort of observe these things, and, I certainly got family time out of it. And so I didn't bring him just to see apartments, right? That's one part of it, but it was really cool to be able to talk through and say, how do we evaluate this investment? How do these operators look at it? And then how do you make decisions whether it's a good fit or not? So it was really cool to be able to have that opportunity. So with that said, for my sort of impressions of the Raleigh area, the experience, I thought it was a really cool area. Obviously, that's a very much a growing area. A lot of population growth, job growth. You have the Research Triangle there. You have the universities like Duke, Carolina State, Wake Forest isn't far from. So it's a pretty vibrant area by and large. I mean, obviously school is out, so less vibrant than normal, but pretty cool area and a lot going on. And obviously proximity to, a lot of places down in South, and a good airport, international airport in Raleigh, Durham. So I think broadly speaking, it was really a good area. People were super friendly, which I met some folks from California who came there and I lived there, and said people are so welcoming in that area. Maybe that's just part of the southern charm in that area, but very welcoming, and sort of good to be around others in that area. Market growth, clearly a big driver. Obviously, the need for housing, that's partly the reason. It's people are still flocking there, whether retirees or people just want a better environment to live in. And, so that one key area. So we got the chance. We went on a little tour. We were on the bus with a lot of investors, the CEO and other leadership within their operating team that were behind the scenes, securing these properties, evaluating them, underwriting them, and working through the bank to get financing and such. We got to tour different properties, and you got a really good feel for the types of properties, and how really, frankly, to get to know them, to see how they think about their business and these investments and where they see the market. Really fascinating to kind of get it from their perspective, to see how they're evaluating what's happening, because there's so much noise and information out there. And we know real estate itself is very local, right? But it's good to kind of understand it from a macro level, but then how does it hit home in that specific market, and how it makes its way into potential investment. And these guys hadn't bought anything in that market for years, because with interest rates rising so dramatically, nobody was selling, right? Because they couldn't get any value for the properties. And so, in this unique deal that was being shown there, a lot of the other ones were purchased because you had distressed sellers who, the financing end, and they have to sell because they just ran out of time and interest rates couldn't support the property. So they had to essentially go back to the bank. But the one property that we saw that was a recent acquisition, one of the sellers was trying to just simplify their assets, and they were primarily from the West Coast. So they ended up getting this deal off market by selling it to these operators, because they knew they could close very quickly and can take over and solidify things. So they sold at a deep discount to basically exit quickly. So sometimes it's not always about the numbers. There's a strategic, operational bent to a lot of these things that maybe don't always show up. In this case, it wasn't stressed. It was just they were trying to move in a different direction in their business. And so in those cases, they'll take less to do it. So they're buying it at a discount, at a very solid property, 95% occupied. And so it's not this super distressed situation. It's just kind of unique opportunity, but it showed like these operators were ready to know and connected to local brokers that they could get these deals on market. And so it was interesting to discover. But, met with a lot of the members of the team, property managers that were there. You got to talk about how they see their properties and manage them. And so it was really cool to see it firsthand. You kind of see these things that obviously I've been in apartments and was a tenant in them in the past in my life, but to see it from the lens of the property managers to the folks who are renovating it and the different teams that are involved, it's really cool to see of that size, 150 units, 200 units, what goes into it. So it is like a little ecosystem of a business, trying to manage it, to, treat client, in this case, the tenants, their clients essentially, and treat them well and continue to provide a good service out there. So it really highlighted business in a sense, because even my son who's studying business, you hear about these things, but what does it really look like in real life? And so this kind of gave that lens of it, of all the different components to the marketing. You got the sales team working with clients, you have the maintenance crew maintaining the property, and then you have to think about growth and renovating the property to make it more attractive and grow and sort of be continually successful going forward. So it's really cool, very cool to see. The team themselves were very professional, and I think they, in their track record, they had a lot of standards that they were maintaining that kind of filtered down to the culture and the types of people that were working there. And so it really was very cool to see. We're hard to replicate that even on a Zoom meeting or something, but to kind of see them in their environment was really awesome. So I'm very encouraged by it all, because I think you're meeting with operators, it kind of getting a sense of their business plan. Where does these properties and such fit in or don't fit in, and why they're very selective and they stay in their lane, right? And they kind of know what they're doing in that particular market for that type of property, which in this case was more of a workforce housing. So not high end, but very quality products that are good for a lot of working class people. And they provided a great product, very clean environment. So really interesting to see. So from an investment side of things, right? Let me just shift gears. So the experience was wonderful. Got to see different properties and they started feeling similar. Again, this is where they're buying the things that they do best and that fit how they operate. And so from an investment standpoint, taking that lens for a second, what, over time that I've been investing and didn't appreciate as much early on was how important it is to evaluate the operator, right? Because, you can have a good property and good area with a bad operator. They might be somewhat successful, but there's probably a good chance it's not going to succeed, right? Or they can not do as well as they could. But in this scenario, I really think the operators are such a key component because it's you're partnering with them. Who are you getting into business with investing? Where most people are passively investing, say, 3 or 4 decades of, the S&P 500 or wherever they're investing, they likely don't even know which companies they're invested in and who the people are running them and how they work and what their financials look like. It's kind of like just speculating or not, right? And so here you're getting hands-on with people to really meet with them and understand how they think about things. How deep do they think around contingency planning? Because unfortunately, things will change and there's only so much they can control. So it gets away from the spreadsheets that we might be looking at home to something more tangible and meeting them and see how they communicate and obviously understand their experience. And do they hold up as people with integrity that you can trust because they're going to have to deal with stuff that maybe you didn't expect, right? And things are not always going to work. Are they equipped to handle it in a way that you feel good with, right? That are going to fight for you and investors and partners in these types of deals. I believe for investments, especially of these sorts of magnitude, investing in your apartment complex, that could last 3, 5, 7 years, right? Or longer, right? And maybe over the long term, doing that in person sort of due diligence, I think makes a lot of sense, right? You're seeing these things in real life, you're really touching and feeling and better understanding the landscape or you're getting in the neighborhoods, the culture around it. I think it really makes a difference. And, anyone knows me, I'm big into real estate and, individuals and duplexes and seeing them. And, I think it puts it really much a stronger connection to it. And you really get a feel for if it's a good fit for you or not. So I really encourage anyone in there thinking about any of these things to go see them, see the operations, and you'll get a better feel whether they're a good fit for you and your approach to investing and what you're trying to achieve primarily from your investing. And just like anything, and you probably heard anyone into real estate and business for that matter in general, is that relationships matter. And there's very little that most people can do on their own by themselves. I mean, we might want to try. I think it's a recipe for failure, and I don't think you're going to see all the opportunities. But obviously, in this world, relationships matter. Obviously, within the teams themselves, they're vertically integrated. They have their construction teams, the evaluators, analytical arm, and all those sorts of things. And so they are a cohesive team. And, and certainly in real estate, you need a lot of trust, communication, and stuff. And that goes a long way with us too as investors in deals, is getting to know them because you're building that relationship with them, right? Who are these people and why are they doing the things they're doing? And can you entrust them with what significant amount of your wealth, right? That's really what it comes down to. And really trying to get as aligned as possible how they see things so it's a good fit for you personally. It really takes some effort. It does. But when you're putting a significant amount of dollars in these types of things, I would suggest that it makes more sense to do it to help de-risk what you're investing in. And frankly, you go into these things and on a daily basis, we don't know what happens. So you're going to have to expect the hard times will come potentially, right? And how are they going to communicate those things? Are they going to hide things, right? These guys that we met were super transparent about it. They, the finances, they would share everything that they see because you are partnered with them. So why would they not, right? So you're trusting them. So they're going to open up the kimono and share everything with you as well, which I think is the right approach. So The experience is great, fun, right? Got to spend some quality time with my son and, kind of share broadly speaking around these investment philosophies, way to look at things, which was good in a real life environment and stuff we got to discuss and go through it. So we're not going to go through all the details here. That wasn't the point. But I guess a bigger piece of all of this, when I'm thinking, about this was, yes, an event to be able to spend time with family, I'll then learn kind of how we're thinking about it from a business and investment standpoint, but it's also helping prepare kids for the next generation and potentially the legacy of all of these things. Because, we've openly talked about this with our kids around, well, it's estate planning is typically sort of set up to be about transferring wealth, right? As much as possible, as quickly as possible. That's clearly a component of it. But what is often maybe neglected or not talked about is preparing people who are going to, inherit that wealth, preparing them for that wealth, right? Do they understand what you're invested in, how to manage it, how you see things, and how you want them to use the wealth that you're leaving them? We often maybe neglect that. And give those helping to sort of transfer some knowledge, some experience, and then understanding how, my wife and I had thought about our wealth so that they understand if they are put in that position to have to oversee it in the future, right? It's also helping them shape their own investment philosophy on things over time as well, which again, experience doing things are, to me, the best way to learn. I mean, obviously books and analytics, YouTube, I love it. Like, you can learn a lot, but I don't think it can replace anything to actually going through it. And so having them take a look at these things, look at the financials, seeing the people and how you can evaluate these things, I think was a big component of it to almost transfer, give them experience, knowledge, right? And skill and confidence. And it's a shared experience we get to connect with, and hopefully we'll do more of these things. And I think it's just like anything, money is a very taboo topic that I think is often sort of out of the equation. And, even to the point where I've come across people where they're talking about their aging parents and openly admitting the fact that they don't know what could be coming in terms of their inheritance. It could be a dollar or $100 million, right? They have no idea because they've never had any conversation about that with their parents. And it just sharing the disconnect that has been built around this, that money, well, all those things are taboo topics, right? Anyone knows my philosophy around these things. It's money is the tool that helps you drive and build the life you want. It's just a tool. And you should be able to talk about it freely without any embarrassment or worry about these things, right? Anyone who thinks they know everything about these things is basically lying to you. But, we make it out to be so much, but it is just a tool to kind of shape the life we want to lead and things we want to support in. Why can't we talk about it freely? And it's something that I'm certainly want to encourage you to think about if you have kids or other people you care about. I can engage in those conversations that are deeper level and make it less painful or worrisome to talk about. Right? We should be able to, because to me, when I think about legacy and what we're transferring, it isn't just the money. Money is the tool or resource that we want to share with our loved ones. But more importantly, it's our values, our philosophy on things. And so that they're prepared to take it to the next level, right? And handle opportunities that come their way and be responsible people and just good people in the end of it. To train them on those things and let them experience it for themselves. And that, I think, sometimes I heard this the other day, was like, sometimes the most valuable thing we can give our kids is perspective, and so that they can adopt it and sort of shape their thinking. So the gold pig race, I think from an investor side, from this sort of trip is, if you can, I would encourage you, especially if you're getting into any of these sorts of deals, meet the operators, right? You got to get to know the people you are investing with, right? And can you trust them, how they think about things, and do they align with how you think about it and the goals you're trying to strive for in your life, and how the investment fits into that. And visit, the areas where you can, right? Like in this case, we went to Raleigh to see it. Some cases, where it's oil field, whatever it is, try to invest time to go see them. I know it's difficult, people are busy, but I think in the end it will help still, whether this is the right fit for you or not. guys. And, and which is a good thing. And then, through my network and friends and others who are invest in other things, I can run these things by them. So we can all jointly support questions, right? Where have you failed? When have you gone bankrupt? What have you done to tackle when hardship comes in past deals, right? What have you learned along the way? Because just like anyone else, a good business or a good investment operator, they're constantly learning along the way here what works, what doesn't, and not helping to shape how they're operating and operating. So people you want to see what progression's like, because there's no way that they've done everything perfectly right. It's just not going to happen. That's where a lot of these things are. But how have you gotten smarter and better over time? And because assumptions are just going to continue. And that's the type of person you probably want to be around, right? To ensure that they're continuing progressing in what they're doing. And, numbers say one thing, but it's understanding really core element of the business, story behind it, a plan of how they're attacking it. I think is really key as you're evaluating any business, right? Or investment that, you're going to put some dollars in. From my parents' side, obviously that's another role to play in my life, not a business owner or investor, but as a parent, it's really encouraged me personally even to include my kids in more things, right? Because they can handle them. I know when they're maybe younger, you got to tailor it down a little bit, but over time, as you build them up, they get more confident. And obviously they're teaching, be exposed to certain things, but try to where you can, even if you don't think they're ready yet, include them in discussion and your decision making. And I think that will really help, because they may have a perspective that's useful, right? That you didn't even think about. And so it's really good. But worst case is that they're learning from it and gaining some confidence and getting exposure to certain things like this. And it allows them to see how you make decisions, how you think about things analytically, you problem solve. And, it helps them sort of maybe feel for that, right? As they're evaluating things for their own personal life, right? How do parents think about these things? And hopefully that allows them to make better decisions along the way and problem solve and know what to look for with some level of confidence, right? That they can build on. And I think really will help, I guess, normalize the conversations around money, investing, and almost diffuse it to some degree, because we can put so much pressure on what it means to be wealthy and hitting a net worth. And it's like, your identity is tied to those things. It's really not. I mean, it's supposed to help you support the life you want to live. It isn't just about the money. If it is, then you probably will never have enough, right? But it's about trying to say, how does the money support the life you want to lead, who you are? It's not money, it's who you become and the life you lead and where you want to support and spend your time, energy to impact yourself, your family, and others. After it really ends up there, right? That's your true identity, not what your bank account says, your net worth says. So it hopefully normalizes the conversation around it to, in my mind, put money in its place. That's all I want to cover on this episode. Hopefully give you some sort of sense of the trend, and we'll have some videos on this later down the road to share. But we're going to give you some thoughts from both the investor side of things, evaluator, but also, thinking about conversations with your family members, kids, etc. And, even how we can help them become better investors, better managers of our own wealth, because ultimately we want them to be able to independently make these sorts of decisions, but it comes with experience and exposure and, giving them some time to absorb some of the experience. So thanks again for joining me on the next episode. We'll cover the second part. I'm going to try to drag my son into the conversation because so he can share some of his perspectives on the experience, because obviously I'm coming in from my lens, but it also might shed some light into how the younger generation views these things and, what did he learn from investing in business that really stood out to him. So I'm hoping that might give you some perspective too, as you maybe talking with your children about it. So we'll see you on the next episode. And thanks as always for listening. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you soon.
Thanks for joining me on this episode today. I really am grateful for you as listeners to the Perennial Pride podcast. I hope you're getting some tremendous value out of it and hopefully pushing you along your journey to financial freedom. I put this podcast together really to help sort of help you get more educated around your finances so that you feel empowered to live the life that you really want. And if you like the content that you heard today or watched, then I would encourage you to go to my website, perennialpride.com. There's tons of other content there. And you can access my book, Wealth Beyond the Numbers. You can buy it there on my website. It's a aggregation of a lot of great tips and tools I've learned to not only build my wealth in my accounts, but build wealth in my life and abundance and joy, and something that has a lot of my experiences in the journey that I've been on personally. Hopefully that can be also of value to you as you sort of move forward. So thanks again for being a Perennial Pride listener, and we'll see you on the next episode.